Welcome back to the Matthew Rice Show. This week in the show, we'll be getting you set for the New Year's 6 bowl games, and then in another show, we will go through the whole entire bowl lineup in depth and talk about all the trap games for highly ranked teams and just games that might help you pick your bowl mania predictions. Also, joining us to be our guest this week is Noah Hudgens and Andrew McKelvey, and that'll be in part 2 of the video coming later tonight. But I want to first start with the Peach Bowl, and it's a great matchup facing the 9th-ranked Florida State Seminoles taking on the 18th-ranked Houston Cougars. It's going to be a barn burner, in my opinion. You got Florida State with Dalvin Cook and Everett Golson, 2 dynamic players that can affect a game. And we've seen that with Everett Golson, not only this year, but when he was at Notre Dame. And Dalvin Cook got hurt earlier in the year a little bit. But in my opinion, if he would have stayed healthy this year, he would have been in New York this weekend for the Heisman. And we will also be setting your 3 Heisman finalists later in the show. But Houston coming in, the American Athletic Conference champion this year, and head coach Tom Herman, coming over from Ohio State, as we all know, really put this team, I think, on the map for years to come. Not only this year, but years to come. Just signed a new contract extension last week that will put him and will make him a Houston Cougar for a long time. So I do see this matchup going either both ways. It could be a high-scoring affair, or it could be a defensive battle. We will have to see. And that game is New Year's Eve at noon on ESPN. We're going to our first national semifinal. The Clemson Tigers will be taking on the Oklahoma Sooners down in Miami. This game, I've looked at a little bit this week, and it's one of those games where it can go either both ways. It can be one team can have all the momentum, or the other team can have all the momentum. It should be a great game New Year's Eve down in South Florida. And we all know about Clemson. They got Deshaun Watson, and you got Wayne Gallman, the running back, 2 dynamic players that you let them in open space, they're going to hurt you. And I believe Oklahoma, in the weeks leading up to the national semifinal, Bob Stoops is going to preach that to his guys, is that we need to stop these 2 people. I mean, Clemson has numerous threats besides them, but it starts with them too. On the other side, Oklahoma, I mean, you got Baker Mayfield, and I think Baker got a little snubbed out of New York. I believe he should be in New York this weekend for the Heisman. But playing in the Big 12, conference champs this year, I expect Oklahoma to be ready for the challenge at hand that Clemson gives them. They have plenty of time to prepare for what Dabo Swinney runs. And I'm gonna go out right now and say, at this very moment, I am picking the Sooners to win that game. In my opinion, I would love to see an Alabama-Oklahoma matchup in the national championship. But we will see. In that game is New Year's Eve at 4 p.m. on ESPN. Switching to the other national semifinal, the Alabama Crimson Tide are taking on the Michigan State Spartans. Now, besides the game we talk about later, I think this is the second biggest matchup of the New Year's Six bowl games. You have Alabama, who have Derrick Henry, Jake Coker. When you put Derrick Henry in open space, and we've seen this all year, he is going to hurt you. He gets running downhill. He's going to hurt you. This could be a very long game for the Spartans' defense. Don't get me wrong, Michigan State's defense is very good. But they have not faced a running back like Derrick Henry this year. Yes, they faced Ezekiel Elliott. They shut him down. Derrick Henry is about 5 times better than Ezekiel Elliott. No offense, Ohio State fans. But on the other side for Michigan State, you have Connor Cook. Now, what happened last week while receiving the MVP award from Archie Griffin, that was uncalled for. In my opinion, if I was Mark D'Antoni, I would be like, you know what? You don't do that. Connor, if you're watching, Archie has 2 Heismans, you have 0. It's a big difference there, big boy. So, Michigan State, don't get me wrong, has threats all over the field, and it starts on defense. I mean, they might have the best front 7 in college football. I know I've said that before, but I really do think their front 7 is the best. I mean, and you have Riley Bullock. Riley Bullock is a big difference maker. You have Malik McDowell, another big difference maker on defense. But Connor needs to put that blemish behind him. I'm not saying it was okay. It was totally uncalled for. But we will see what happens New Year's Eve night. And that is a 8 o'clock kickoff, on ESPN. Going to the game that I think has the biggest impact of the New Year's Six Bowls, it's 2 very known teams and programs. Ohio State taking on Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, New Year's Day. I think this could be a very high-scoring game if Ohio State can get the offense going. They have plenty of time to prepare on what Notre Dame will bring at them. But I do think Urban, when it gets into the postseason, Urban coaches very differently in the postseason. And I think we saw that last year against Alabama. He ran plays that you wouldn't see really in a normal game. I think he puts his players in the right positions to execute in big games, in bowl games. On the other side for Brian Kelly, yes, the loss at Clemson this year in the rain. I think they should have had that game. And then, if not for the Stanford last-second field goal, I believe Notre Dame would be in the Final Four. And that is a 1 o'clock kickoff on New Year's Day on ESPN. Turning to the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, where the Iowa Hawkeyes will be taking on the Stanford Cardinal. Iowa comes obviously in off a tough loss on championship weekend. Obviously, they have plenty of time to prepare for the Cardinal, but the Cardinal, I think, poses too many threats for the Hawkeyes. You have Christian McCaffrey, Stanford's running back, who is a finalist for the Heisman this weekend in New York, and you have Kevin Hogan, their quarterback. They've played great all year, despite the loss at Northwestern, first week of the year, I believe. You need to remember, that was a 9 a.m. Pacific kickoff. Stanford's still rolling out of bed at that time on a normal day. And that is a New Year's Day kickoff, 5:10 Eastern kick on ESPN. Turning to the last New Year's Six bowl game that we will talk about, the Old Miss is taking on Oklahoma State. I expect Chad Kelly to have a big standout game for Old Miss. Oklahoma State has looked pretty good lately. I believe Mike Gundy will have his guys ready for the challenge at hand. Coming New Year's night at 8:30 kickoff Eastern time on ESPN. Now, we will have a whole nother show devoted to diving deeper into these matchups. Probably 1 or 2 days before these games take place. But the game I want to focus on right now that catches my eye outside of all the other top 6 games is the Alamo Bowl. And, I mean, we all know these two teams that I'm about to mention can get up and down the field and put points on the board, and defense is not very good. It's good, but you won't see much of it, I don't think. It is the Oregon Ducks taking on TCU. We all know Oregon struggled after that Michigan State game this year. And TCU had a little trouble with Kansas, had 2 of their top guys go down in Trevon Boykin and Josh Dotson. Boykin should be back for the bowl game. I do not believe my Dotson will. My sources are telling me it could be it's questionable. He has plenty of time to recover, but I don't believe he will be ready by then. Now turning to what everyone will be focused on this weekend is the Heisman. You have the finalists Derrick Henry from Alabama, Christian McCaffrey from Stanford, and Deshaun Watson from Clemson. Now, like I mentioned last week, Joe Tessitore of ESPN has just Derrick Henry in a landslide victory. Yes, I think the same thing. I mean, if you just compare his stats to everyone else. Yes, the only person that really faced Alabama's defense this year was Leonard Fournette. But I just don't see anyone else besides Derrick Henry being able to win it. But we will have to see. That is Saturday night. We would like to thank you for joining us on the New Year's 6 pregame edition. Later on tonight, we will have our interview and special guests, Noah Hudgens and Andrew McKelvey. We hope you will join us for that. That is part 2 of the show for this week. But until then, this is Matthew Rice signing off.